Hello everyone, this is Aya Arruzi from Hinawi Software. Our topic for today is used among several business types, companies, schools, hospitals, everywhere, wherever there are employees in the place. This activity is highly used among employees. So first of all, as you can see here, I'm logged in from the admin account because I want everything to be displayed. Whatever window I open, I want to have complete permissions in order to deliver the idea perfectly and efficiently. So our topic for today is mainly about absconded workers. What is the meaning of absconded workers? Mainly, those are the employees who just suddenly ran away from the place, from the working place. So basically, instead of like taking a leave, as we have mentioned in our previous videos, or an absence, or instead of stopping their salaries, in this case, we have employees who just suddenly ran away from the place without giving any previous notice about it. So they just suddenly ran away. How do we deal with these kind of employees, and how do those employees affect the salary sheet? How do they affect the status, their status on the system, whether active or inactive? And what do we do in case they return back suddenly as well? What if we want to, for example, cancel the request, cancel that they ran away in the first place? And what if we want to record that on the system that they ran away, but they returned back, so we want to record their returning back, the date of their returning back? Several cases can happen, and each one of these scenarios and cases has a different aspect of consequences and how we deal with it. So first of all, let's go to Hrms activities, and as you can see here, we have absconded workers. Between parentheses, we have them as runaway employees. The workflow of this activity is pretty simple. It's very simple and straightforward. Basically, we have the form itself of the absconded workers. We have releasing or canceling absconded workers. We are going to talk about the difference between release and cancel practically to understand the main difference between them. And finally, we have more information here, which contains like further information and details about the absconded workers activity itself. Now, before I get into this, let's go to the payroll and let's see a normal case or a normal scenario of an existing employee. Let's go to the HR payroll and let's create a draft salary. Now, I want to go to this company, which is test company. Everything we are going to perform regarding this activity is going to be in the test company. Now, let's create a draft salary sheet. Let's say, for example, 2019, and let's filter employees. So at the time of filtering employees and viewing the existing employees, we have this employee, which is employee number 50, and we can easily select that employee and have it displayed in the salary sheet draft, where we can see further information and details about the basic salary, about the total, about everything. Like the employee is active and everything is displayed fine regarding the salary sheet draft. And this is in May 2019. Like, I chose this date because the joining date here is in January 1st. So we have to choose any date that isn't before this date. So any date after this date, basically. It's a draft. So those are the information displayed. Now let's see the scenario where that employee is considered as an absconded workers. So let's go to absconded workers form and let's select the same company name and let's select the same employee which we have seen now in the draft. Afterwards, we are going to choose a reason, any reason. Like, we can add more reasons through Fn, F2 on the keyboard, where we can add a new reason in both English and Arabic, and we can set the priority, which shows us where it comes in the list. Okay, That's in case we want to add more different reasons for running away. And let's choose, for example, important reason, for example. By the way, this absconded workers form can be used for both timesheet and HR employees, because as you can see here, one of those employees is an HR employee, which is this, and the first employee is a timesheet employee. So both of them are displayed fine here. Now let's save this activity. Let's choose the reason again, and let's save this. Now data is saved successfully. Afterwards, before we release or cancel that employee, we will check the effect of this on the salary sheet. So let's go to payroll and then to HR payroll, and let's go create a draft. We will select the same company and we will create the draft salary sheet. We will select the exact same date which we have seen before putting this employee as an absconded worker, and we will filter employees. Now, as you see here, the searching is complete. However, there is no matching record found. Now, why is that? Basically, because that employee is now an absconded worker, a runaway worker. So we do not have that employee active in the system anymore. This employee has to be either released back from being absconded or cancelled, like the request itself must be cancelled. Now let's see the effect on the salary sheet after we cancel the request. After cancelling the request of an absconded worker, cancelling the request, by the way, means that we do not want it to be considered in the first place. Like we want to, as if we're changing our minds basically. Like cancelling the request means that we do not want the system to take that into consideration, that it even happened in the first place, as if it did not happen. So we will select this company, same company. It will show us the list of the people or the employees who were absconded, which is this employee, and the absconded date is this date. We have selected this date. And we will select that employee, and we either have the option to release them back or cancel, delete the request. Now, canceling the request, as I have said, will not, as if the data is not found anymore, as if the data did not even exist in the first place. So now, when we want to create the payroll, draft payroll, and select the same company name, and then we have to create a draft, choose the same date, and filter view all employees. You see here, the employee will be shown displayed here again, as if he was not even absconded in the first place. So we can easily select that employee and have him again displayed in the draft salary sheet. So that's how the absconded workers activity form affects the salary sheet. That's how deleting or cancelling the request also affects the salary sheet. It makes it displayed again. Now let's see the release or cancelling in absconded workers regarding the employee. As you see here, it shows that data is not found. This will confirm to us that when we have released the employee and then we created the draft for the salary sheet and then went back to the absconded workers list, it's not displayed here. We have cancelled it, cancelled the request, and it is not there anymore. So basically, the request is not even in the first place created now, as if the system did not notice this or did not take it into consideration, and it can be easily created in the draft salary sheet. Now, we will see another scenario where we'll release the absconded worker after we have seen how cancelling or deleting affects the salary sheet and affects the employee's status. which shows the inactivity of that employee, we will see now how releasing the absconded workers affect the system. Now we will see another scenario where we go to the absconded workers form and then select the same company and select the employee, and then we will see how this will affect the releasing now instead of canceling. So let's go to, for example, the reason and select important reason, and let's save this. So now the employee is considered as an absconded worker. When we go to the absconded workers form and through the second item here we will choose releasing of absconded workers, we will have a list of all the employees who are now considered as absconded, right? So let's see here. We will take one scenario for absence and another scenario for leave. Okay, like considering the absconded worker as a leave request and then considering the absconded worker as an absence request. So let's select, for example, this employee and let's release the absconded worker. Now here at the time of releasing this employee, we have to set the date. Now that's the main difference between the release and the cancelling. Cancelling is mainly just cancelling it without taking it into consideration. But now after, like at the time of releasing, we want to check when did the employee come back or when did the employee got released. So if we put the date of the release, same date as the absconded date here, the number of days will be 0. And therefore, the adjust on will not allow us to edit or change. All these will be grayed out and we will not be able to add or delete any adjustment because the number of days is 0. Therefore, let's see a scenario where, for example, after taking the absconded date on this date, the employee got back on the next day. So basically the number of days now is considered as 1. Now we will be able to choose the adjust on. The first scenario is leave. For example, let's consider that at the time this employee got back, we want to consider that he ran away for a leave. Like let's consider that this time he went off of work, it was considered as a leave request. And then when we check leave and we add this in the list, all the items here in the absence will be grayed out since we chose the adjust on as leave, not absence. Now we have the option to choose the leave type because leave contains many types, right? All the types which we have in the system, all the types which we created, new types which we created in the system. So let's say, for example, annual leave. We will consider that this employee got absconded for 1 day and it was adjusted on, like considered as a leave, and this type of leave is an annual leave, and the payment can also be selected for any of them. It can either be the payment can either be displayed in the salary sheet. So at the time of creating salary sheet, there will be some specific amount deducted based on the number of days which this employee was absconded. Like it will be considered as a leave. So we can have this option in salary sheet. We can also consider this as pay now, like payment and everything will be displayed instantly and it will be paid now. We can also consider this as an update ledger, which means that it will not be deducting any amount, although we have selected the deduct as a leave, annual leave, but it will only be displayed in a report that the employee was absconded for 1 day. It will not be considered as any amount being deducted. Also, we can select here the payment type as leave without pay. So in the leave types, we have several types. One of them is leave without pay. We can also have this type in the payment methods. So leaving without payment is also an option, and it has its own setup in the HRMS general settings, where we can select and set up how leave without pay is actually performed according to each and every policy. It could vary between companies because each has their own policies regarding leaving without payment. So that's also an option here. Let's say we want to consider this as like a deduction in amount in the salary sheet. Now, as you can see here, the days displayed here is 1. The from date, which will read from here, is this date. And in the to date, we will put, see here it says invalid date because you cannot leave it empty. So we have to write the date. Let's say, and then enter. It will automatically calculate the pay days, which is 1, and the leave salary. By the way, the system will make it very clear to us that everything is exactly as it's supposed to be. Like, for example, the to date cannot be entered wrongly, different than the number of days here, because as we see here, we have only 1. Number of days is 1. So if we try to put the to date as, let's say, 10th of June, it says that the adjustment days should be equal to days. You cannot have different days here than those which are displayed here. So it must be exactly the same number of days. So that's how the system shows us pop-up messages to inform us that everything should be displayed in an organized way, and the leave salary in this case will be 43.33. That's the first scenario. Now the second scenario is considering the day, adjust on as an absence. In this case, as we see here, the leave adjustment is grayed out now, and the leave salary is 0 because we don't want to consider this now. We want to consider it as an absence. Now, in the absence activity, we have like 2 different types to consider an absence. It's either without an excuse or with excuse. And by the way, we have made like a whole video about this absence activity where we set the setup and the settings regarding the absence, whether it's without excuse and with excuse, and the main difference between them. So each one of them contains its own setup, its own policies. Without an excuse is different than an employee which took an absence with excuse. So basically, if an employee took an absence with excuse, and we can select this as days, of course, because here the number of days is 1, so automatically it's in days, and automatically we don't have any absence amount deducted because an employee was taking the absence with excuse. And in the setup, in the current setup we have in the system, and any employee which has an excuse will not have any amount deducted. Like, this will all be grayed out. It will only be considered as days and no amount will be deducted. However, if we select this as without excuse, as you can see here, and we set this as days, we can also set this as for example, like 1 day. See here, the absence now in this case is considered as 13.33. It's not 0 anymore because taking an absence without excuse will deduct a specific amount. It will deduct amounts and it will not be considered the same as with excuse. Whenever we increase the number of days, the absence will be increased as well. So 2 days will deduct 26, based of course on the salary of the employee, based also on the setup of the absence and the leaves. If we increase, whenever we increase here the days, the absence amount will also be increased. And here, like, the deduction will take place according to absence. So that's the main difference between a scenario of adjusting as an absence and adjusting as leave. So basically, that's how the absconded workers or runaway employees work and functions in the system. The process is pretty simple. All we have to do is create an absence request or like a form for any employee who suddenly ran away from the place. And then we also have the option to either release him back after some specific days, like whenever he returns back, we can release him back, and then we can choose whether we want that release to be considered as an absence or as a leave. If we consider it as an absence, it will read from the setup of the absence form, and if we consider it as a leave, it will be reading from the leave settings, which is currently set up in the system based on the company's policies. That's the main process of the absence of the absconded workers activity. We also have here more information in case we want to view further information about the absconded workers, and we can also, as I said, cancel the absconded workers in case we do not want it to be taken into consideration at all, and we do not want the adjustment process to be taken into consideration at all. We also have the Hrms reports. This is the final step where we can see several reports of all the activities which we have performed. As you can see here in the Hrms activities report, we have complete reports regarding list of all absconded workers. So that's the main thing regarding the absconded workers. We also have seen how it affects the salary sheet when the employee is inactive, and how it affects the absence or the leave in case it's released back. That's the main process in the system regarding the absconded workers. I hope this video was clear and that I delivered the points accurately and precisely. Please don't forget to watch our other videos and to subscribe to our channel and share it with everyone who might be interested in any of those modules or more. Thank you so much.